This is the Sirui Anamorphic 35mm f1.8, and I believe that when this lens was released a few years ago, it completely changed the budget indie filmmaking industry for good. Let me explain. What's up, nerds, and welcome back to the channel. So the invention of anamorphic lenses back in the 1920s brought a whole new perspective to movie making. Introducing a wider aspect ratio and larger than life viewing in movie theaters, anamorphic lenses would define cinema for the next 100 years. Used to capture hundreds of movies like Ben-Hur, Blade Runner, Pulp Fiction, Interstellar, and many, many more. And until about 10 years ago, anamorphic lenses were exclusive to high-budget Hollywood feature films. Given the high price tag of these lenses to rent or to buy, they were completely out of reach for young indie filmmakers. But now in 2023, we have a fast-growing catalog of affordable anamorphic lenses in several different sensor sizes and camera mounts, including this awesome Sirui lens that I have right here that I will define in this video as a proper movie lens, sort of. All right, quick disclaimer, Sirui did send me this lens to check out, but no money changed hands and they don't get to review this video before it goes out. This video does have a sponsor though, and that's Motion Array. I'll talk about them later in the video. If you want to know all of the amazing history, specs, and tech behind anamorphic lenses, then I'm not the guy to learn that from, but I would highly recommend checking out the channel Anamorphic on a Budget. His YouTube videos are packed full of specs, analyzing different lenses, and just so much value in his videos, and I would highly recommend checking out his channel in the description after this video. But I do want to go over my experience using this lens and all of the other lenses in Surei's lineup with my Sony FX30 and Blackmagic Pocket 4K over the last few years shooting short films, weddings, YouTube videos, and commercials. The lens I'm focusing on in this video is the Sirui Anamorphic 35mm f1.8. It features a 1.33 times squeeze factor and is designed for 16:9 sensors. So you're still going to get that 2:4:1 widescreen aspect ratio with this lens because it's designed for that 16:9 sensor. This does not cover full frame sensors, unfortunately, but Sirui does have a lineup of full frame lenses that you can check out. They're a lot more expensive, but they are just as good at build quality and have a lot of really cool features to them. The version of this lens sent to me was the Micro Four Thirds version, but they sent an adapter, which is actually a really cool feature of these lenses, that just screws onto the back of it that is an E-mount adapter. So I can put this directly onto my Sony FX30, and that adapter isn't clunky and huge. It's literally the size of that silver ring right there. This lens is also available in RF mount and L mount, and those adapters are compatible only with the Micro Four Thirds mount, and they have them available for Sony E mount, Nikon Z mount, and Canon EFM mount. I would love to see a Fuji X mount version of this. I know that they have a couple of these lenses available for X mount, but I'd love to be able to mount this to a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, a Sony, and a Fujifilm when I inevitably buy one. The cost of that adapter is about $20, by the way, which is a freaking steal. The focus gears on this lens are actually adapters, but they are provided with the lens. So originally it just comes with the focus ring by itself, but the adapters do come with it, that they slide on super easy and they hold very tight. The build quality of this lens is really put together. It is not light by any means, but comparatively to other anamorphic lenses on the market, this is probably the lightest of the bunch. Actually, I think the 50mm version is a lot lighter, but you can kind of see it in the palm of my hand here. It's still a decent compact size, so you could definitely run this on a gimbal. I just love having it on my handheld rig and it fits very nicely. All of Surei's anamorphic lenses do feature the blue anamorphic flare. So anamorphic flares come in different flavors. You can get amber. I feel like I've seen just like neutral, and then blue is the most common. If you've seen anything from J.J. Abrams, you'll know what the blue flare is. Both the focus ring and the aperture ring are very smooth. I have my small rig follow focus motor that I typically attach to them. This thing's able to rotate it around, no issues at all, even though this isn't the most powerful of focus motors on the market. And for those asking, it's a 191-degree focus throw. The price of this lens is currently $499 US. Not on sale, this lens is about $599, so you're getting $100 off right now if you check it out on B&H. And the other mounts for this, the RF mount and L mount, are currently $550 and irregularly $600. So if you're looking for an anamorphic lens, now is the time to buy. With those sales going on, especially during Black Friday, that price could get even lower. And the rest of their anamorphic lenses are also on crazy deals right now. So even though Sirui did send me this lens, I'm planning to purchase the rest of the set while they're still on sale because I am obsessed with this anamorphic combo on my FX30. And another thing I'm obsessed with is the awesome video editing assets you can get from Motion Array. See what I did there? That's a Linus Tech Tips transition for you. I've been using Motion Array in my video editing for years, so to have them sponsor a video on my channel is just absolutely unreal to me. At motionarray.com, you have access to thousands of video editing templates, presets, and plugins that will help you take your video editing to the next level. So for example, if you didn't shoot on an anamorphic lens, but you still want that sci-fi J.J. Abrams anamorphic blue flare, then just go to Motion Array and search for anamorphic flare, and within seconds, you can download and add that recognizable blue streak to your video. Or let's say I wanted to make a cool graphic intro for my YouTube videos. I can choose from one of hundreds of motion graphics templates that they have available, bring it into my editor, and add my logo for an awesome title intro on my channel. But you can also add sound effects, stock footage, motion graphics, and so much more. All of their assets are compatible with Premiere Pro, After Effects, Final Cut, and even DaVinci Resolve, which is what I use, and it's really hard to find a website that supports DaVinci Resolve, graphics, templates, presets, stuff like that. But with Motion Array, I've had no issues finding the templates and presets that I'm looking for. So if you want to check out the video editing assets from Motion Array, you can click my link in the description where you can get $50 off an annual subscription when you sign up. And thank you so much, Motion Array, for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about my overall thoughts and recommendations of this anamorphic lens. So a few years back, my wife and I produced a short film with a set of these anamorphic lenses that I rented from a friend. We shot it with the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, a very small camera crew, and a tiny little grip kit. I think we did the whole thing for less than like $200, and most of that budget was renting these lenses, but the result ended up looking so good. Sadly, I suck, and it took me over 2 years to put together a final edit, and I didn't even have time to put like a proper color grade and sound mix to it. But the image that came from these lenses, I just remember gave this distinct movie look that us young filmmakers crave. Now that could be that it's the same aspect ratio as, feature films, but that does come from the de-squeeze that happens with anamorphic lenses. When I'm shooting with anamorphic lenses, I'm looking for several different qualities that define the anamorphic look. To be honest, the flare is kind of irrelevant to me. Whether or not it has the flare isn't the defining anamorphic feature that I notice with a lot of anamorphic lenses, or is what I'm looking for per se. Most often what I'm looking at is the distortion that it creates around the center of the lens, or the bokeh in the background, and even the soft fall off of the highlights. My preference when it comes to the iconic flare is that it's not distracting, which is very common in budget anamorphic lenses and accessories. And with this lens, I have mixed feelings because I've had a few situations where the flare was just really prominent and I had to adjust my frame in order to bring down that flaring. So if you're doing any type of shot that's pointing directly into a hard light source like the sun or a key light or background light, something like that, that's going to be really prominent in the frame, you are going to notice that flare quite a bit. And the stronger the light source, the stronger the flare. I will say though, I do like the cyan type of look that comes from the flaring in this lens. And I think that flaring is controllable enough by closing down the aperture a little bit, or even just using a flag on a matte box. So there definitely are ways to get around it, but you will find some situations where that flaring could be distracting. But maybe that's exactly what you're looking for and you're actually a really big fan of the big flare. So, I think it's really subjective, honestly. But Sirui, I would love to see a future iteration of these lenses with the amber color flare. As far as the other elements, in my opinion, I would love a little bit more distortion. If you've ever shot with Kawa anamorphic lenses, they have quite a bit of distortion on the outer parts of the frame and kind of this nice little barrel distortion that goes around the subject. I really like the separation that gives. I know not everybody is going to love that. I really like to see it. I think it separates the subject, makes them stand out really nice, but that's only if the lens can maintain proper sharpness with that subject, which I think that a lot of very high-end anamorphic lenses achieve. With this lens, you will see some of that barrel distortion, which I do love. In my opinion, I would just love a little bit more of that. I think the 50mm version has a perfect amount of barrel distortion. I also think that lack of distortion could come from the fact that it is a 35mm lens, so that's probably why the 50 looks a little bit better. Addressing the bokeh from this lens, when you're at f1.8, that bokeh is so clean and just smooth. It does have some chromatic aberration on it, but I actually really like that. And if I want to remove it, there's easy tools in DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro that can get rid of that without losing too much detail. But when you're all the way open at f1.8, I'm happy to say that this lens is surprisingly sharp at wide open and just gets even sharper down to 2.8 or f4. One of my favorite combos actually is to stay at around 2.8 or f2 and then throw like a softening filter in front of the lens so I get that little bit of bloom in the highlights and kind of lifts my blacks a little bit so I'm not crushing those shadows too much. But I was a big fan of using this lens all the way open. In fact, when we shot that short film, it was pretty typical of me to shoot all the way open and then throw an ND filter on the front. And it is awesome to see this lens at 1.8 because typically anamorphic lenses will be around T2, T2.9, something like that, making low light a little more difficult to compensate for. But this lens with that f1.8 does give you some good low light capabilities. Now I know somebody is going to want me to address the focus breathing with this lens. There's a little bit of focus breathing. You can probably see it in some of the B-roll. It's prominent enough that you will notice it. But if you're worried about focus breathing with an anamorphic lens, then probably anamorphic lenses aren't for you. Overall, this has been one of my favorite lenses to shoot with, especially with my FX30. I've always been a really big fan of 35mm on full frame sensors, but with this anamorphic wide look, it kind of gives me that 35mm full frame perspective, I guess. Even though it is a 52mm equivalent, because that anamorphic D-squeeze makes it more of a wider field of view, still kind of get that 35mm experience. Honestly, having this lens has really inspired me to go out and shoot my passion projects. I feel like I've been so distracted by doing YouTube and Instagram lately that I haven't had time to like write some fun scripts or do like short films and stuff like that. So this has definitely sparked the creative in me to go out and shoot something really cool, which I have in the works, so stay tuned. And if you're looking for a sign to go out and shoot your own passion projects, then by all means, use this video as your spark or reason to go and do that. Whether or not you're gonna shoot on anamorphic lenses, just go out and make something awesome. Let me know your thoughts on anamorphic lenses and what you think of this Sirui lens in the comments down below. Love to hear from you guys. If you're interested in purchasing this lens, it is on sale right now. Links are in the description. And if you wanna check out thousands of video editing assets from Motion Ray, click my link in the description, get $50 off an annual subscription. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you never miss out on new young filmmaker content. Good luck filmmaking.